Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Switch to Life, and in today's video we're going to be finally discussing part 3 of my Dreamworks cinematic multiverse theory. Basically, this is a theory that says every single Dreamworks movie, short, and TV show takes place in a multiverse, and I assign specific universes where every single movie takes place. I have previously uploaded 2 parts. A link to the playlist will be in the description down below. Just a heads up, I am sorry about the low sound quality, mainly due to the fact that I hadn't found my YouTube voice at the time. In fact, I probably still haven't. But with that out of the way, let's get started on part 3. So, if you've seen my previous videos, then you will know that I have placed the Shrek franchise in a universe called Earth F, also known as Earth Fairy Tale. Basically, the timeline is as follows. Taking place in 1182 is Shrek and Shrek 2, and in the fall of 1182 is Shrek the Third. Almost a year after that, in spring, Shrek's kids are born, so a year after that, we have Shrek Forever After, where he celebrates the kid's first birthday. During Shrek Forever After, he is taken into an alternate universe where he was never born. This is an alternate timeline of Earth F, not an alternate dimension. We also have the Puss in Boots solo film, which takes place before every single Shrek film, and if I had to guess, it most likely takes place in the year 1180 during Puss in Boots' 5th life. After meeting Kitty Softpaws, he goes on an adventure after the Trident, where he dies, and then he gets engaged to Kitty Softpaws, but he calls off the wedding by not showing up, and it flees to Far, Far Away, where he not only becomes a bounty hunter, but on the side, gambles with a bunch of dogs and dies a 6th time. It is here that he would meet Shrek during his 7th life, in the events of Shrek 2. As we all know, after a while, he is killed by baking cookies with Gingy, which leads to his 7th death, and thus he decides that not only is it dangerous for him to stick around in Far, Far Away, but it also might be a bit crowded because Shrek is more of a celebrity than he is. Shrek is seen as a fearless hero more than Puss in Boots is, so trying to get away from Shrek, he heads back to where he was revered as a hero in the town of Del Mar, where he previously grabbed Poseidon's trident during his 5th life. And thus we get the events of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. For this next section, we're going to stick with our main universe of Dreamworks known as Earth D, also known as Earth Dreamworks. Basically, this is where the majority of movies, TV shows, pretty much everything takes place. And Earth D happens to start out with the Croods, which is set in the year of 5 million years ago during an era called the Cretaceous period. This is also where the end comes in. Basically, a long time ago, the world was one land known as Pangaea, but when the end comes around, we get the many continents that we come to know and love today, and we live in them today. Millions of years later, our next installment on this list is How to Train Your Dragon. This is essentially a film series that we had no idea when it takes place until promotional material for Dragons: The Nine Realms, which is confirmed to be set in the modern day, actually gave us a pretty good idea. The main series takes place 1,300 years prior to the Dragons: The Nine Realms, also known as prior to the modern day or the 21st century. Basically, that means that the main How to Train Your Dragon movies take place during the early 700s. I decided to place the very first film in the year 715, in basically the same year that Hiccup would be as many years old, if he was born in the year 700. This also translates to the second movie, where in the first film, Hiccup was 15 years old. In the second film, he is 20 years old. And by the events of the third film, he's 21. So, with that logic in mind, that means the second film takes place in the year 720. If you've seen the third film, you will know that nothing is contradictory to the modern timeline because dragons have gone into hiding and they're nothing but myths and legends by the time the modern day comes around. which is exactly what it was always meant to be. But now we go into our first installment set in the modern day, or rather the early modern days, namely Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted. If you have seen my previous videos, you will know that at one point, Alex the Lion was found in New York in the year 1972, which means that the entire first movie takes place in the year 1980, and the second movie takes place in January 1981. This means that the third movie, which takes place a few months later, takes place in the summer of 1981. Specifically, Alex's birthday takes place on June 8, 1981. And a few months afterwards, during the November of 1981, we have the movie The Penguins of Madagascar. Specifically, Private's birthday is November 26th, 1981, which is the same day that the movie was released in theaters in 2014. Now we come to the modern day. Basically, this is going to be our first film set in the 2010s, or maybe the 2020s, depending on where the Megamind's Guide to Defending Your City TV show wants to take place. Essentially, I don't know where this is going to happen until Megamind's Guide to Defending Your City is released, but just know that Megamind takes place on Earth Dreamworks. That's all you need to know right now. Okay, so now we come to 2013, where we are once again on Earth Dreamworks, and we're discussing Turbo. This would actually be the second time in Dreamworks history, well, Earth D's history, where we have an animal trying to gain the rights to do something that they want. The first time this happened was during B-Movie, which is actually set in 2007, and after acting as a lawyer for Turbo when he was given the opportunity to compete in the Indianapolis 500, Barry B. Benson eventually gave Turbo the opportunity to win over the court of law so that he could compete as a race car in the Indianapolis 500 without the need for a car. Okay, remember when I said that the first time that animals were given rights was during B-Movie, during the scenes where it was revealed that bees can in fact speak the human language? Whereas most other animals can't, that's actually not true. The only reason the bees weren't shunned from society simply because they tried to sue the human race was due to the fact that previously, in the year 2006, Mr. Peabody, a talking dog, won the case of adopting a human boy named Sherman. And, well, Peabody is technically the only talking dog, but thanks to Peabody, he proved that animals do in fact have intelligence, which gave bees the opportunity to be present in a court of law so they could ask for their rights, and once that happened, other animals were given the chance to have their rights spoken for, which does include the snail of Turbo. So basically, it all started with Mr. Peabody trying to adopt Sherman in 2006. But that's not all Mr. Peabody is responsible for. Throughout history, a dozen or so appearances of a boy and a talking dog were made throughout history. I don't have time to go into the details in this video. In fact, the Mr. Peabody and Sherman movie could probably warrant its own video detailing where exactly each time jump was made. And but essentially the majority of this movie takes place in the year 2014, except for all of the time travel scenes where, all of the time travel stuff happens.
Is everyone amused?
And with that, we finally come to our final Earth D movie as of this video, where we have Home. Essentially, despite being released in 2015, this movie takes place in the not-so-far-off future. It's distant enough that there have been advancements in technology, but not so different that it's unrecognizable. Basically, I'm thinking sometime in the late 2020s, maybe 2030s. It's just the fact that, well, if you watch this movie, you will know that the entire world is changed due to the events of Home. Humans and Boov coexisting together, human technology mixing with Boov technology. Essentially, it's just so complicated that it either needs to be the last installment on Earth D, or it can't take place on Earth D. Personally, I'm leaning towards the former. And now we say goodbye to Earth D so that we can say hello to a new universe known as Earth G, or Guardians. Essentially, this is where the one-time film of Rise of the Guardians takes place. As much as I tried to get it onto Earth D, the only reason that it can't take place on Earth D is, well, due to the fact that Madagascar takes place on Earth D and we already have a Santa Claus from that, we can't have the Santa Claus from Rise of the Guardians taking place in the same universe because the laws of physics just change. We know that the Santa Claus in Rise of the Guardians is actually an immortal being who cannot die unless children stop believing in him. And I doubt that children would stop believing in Santa Claus and then a new Santa Claus comes along. Just doesn't make sense. So essentially, this movie takes place in its own separate universe. I am sorry to say, but that needs to be the case. So what about timeline? Well, in my opinion, Rise of the Guardians takes place in the year 2012, specifically Easter of 2012. And at the very beginning of the movie, we have a flashback sequence of November 21st, 1712, which is basically when Jack Frost was, it's not only when he died, but it's also when he was reborn as Jack Frost. And lastly, we have our last universe known as Earth K, also known as Earth Kung Fu, where the Kung Fu Panda films take place. Essentially, the only reason this can't fit into Earth D is due to the anthropomorphic animals, and, well, yeah, you can get where this is going. Essentially, the first movie takes place in the year 1366, also known as the Late Yuan Dynasty. And the second movie takes place also in the Late Yuan Dynasty, but a year later in 1367. A couple years after the second movie, we get the third Kung Fu Panda movie set in the year of 1369, which actually is the start of a new dynasty known as the Ming Dynasty. This is essentially confirmed to happen because in between the second and third movie, we come to the end of the Yuan Dynasty, which means the next dynasty is the Ming Dynasty. But yeah, so the third movie takes place a couple of years after the second movie, and eventually we're going to get the fourth movie coming this March in 2024. I actually have a question for you guys who are subscribed to the channel. Which video would you like to see next week? The question is up in my community tab, and the video that gets the most answers will be next week's video. I also plan to do a part 4 to this series, as well as a part 5 where I discuss the TV shows. If you're looking for those and more videos, subscribe if you want to keep up to date on all things Dreamworks. But until then, I hope that you guys are staying safe out there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.
How about you spare me the chit-chat?
I'm going to take your...
Chit-chat.
In this...
Chitty-chitty chat-chat. Chat-chat-chat.
In this...
Chit-chat-chat.